From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? I'm glad we're back and looking forward to another spirited conversation.
Oh, I'm doing good, Steve. Always great when we can chat. And how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. We're kind of on a run of one-on-one talks, and I think both of us always get a lot of knowledge out of these things. We get to learn more about each other, and we get to be a little bit more open-minded about these different topics. So today's another chance for us to do that. Before we jump in, we also got a comment from a YouTube viewer, and we want to talk about that. Or a little bit delayed in getting back, but Brian Koloshin left us a comment saying that he is somebody who's gotten involved in some AV systems and testing and has some web experience, but really wanted to understand, what does it take to get into AV programming, and do you need to have the system experience first, or is there another approach you can take? And we'd like to talk with you, Brian, and if you want, we would invite you to engage with us and possibly be a guest. But until then, I hope that you have had an opportunity to listen or watch episodes 187 and 188 with Britt Yenser. She's a newbie, and she says that she is on those episodes, and she's really trying to break into AV programming, and talks a little bit about her experience. So hopefully those episodes will help. But if there's specific questions that you'd like us to answer, or if you want to come in and talk about your story a bit, we're glad to have you. So reach out to us, and we look forward to hearing from you. For today, we came up with a topic that I think will probably be something that everybody will have a different take on it, and a different opinion, and that's what makes a good episode. So what we are looking at is, a lot of times we look at projects as being done when they work, and that that goes for the system operation, and the equipment and the wiring, and but also the programming, and not often do we look under the hood to see what did we actually get. And sometimes what would be under that hood might be shocking, and sometimes you might not be able to look under the hood because you might not either have the keys, or you might not have the know-how to understand what it is. But James, what being that you're kind of in a position now, you used to do your own code and maintain it, but now you're also working with code that's being turned over to you. Talk a little bit about what that feels like now that you have to um, you're turned over a system, and it's hard to be able to specify how it's being done, but when you get it, it may not be what you expect it to be, even though the system will be work to the satisfaction of the requirements.
So I'm gonna answer this first with saying it's frustrating for me. And because I know I mentioned this numerous times on the podcast here, I'm the type of person I like control. Um and I'm not writing the code anymore. So I'm not in control of the code. And when there are things that are wrong, it's like, ugh, if I had the time and I could go in and fix it, but I don't. And that's what you pay people to do. You get these outside programming companies and installers and integrators and all that stuff. So you want what you paid for. So this kind of leading to my answer to this is I've been working on learning and understanding ITIL 4. It's a IT framework. Anyone in the IT world really knows ITIL, know of ITIL if they don't know it and you are using it. And 4 is the ITIL 4 is the newest release framework to address the fourth industrial revolution in IT, which it has to do with cloud and mobile. And one of the things that they were talking about, it made a lot of sense. And this is where some communication comes into play when you're dealing with getting code from somebody else is setting that scope of work and the experience you want done. Because like you said, Steve, if you're hitting buttons and things are working, the output is what you got. But if it's not working the way you want, the outcome is not. So the way they kind of, and ITIL talks about this, ITIL 4, and the way the instructor in the video I was watching talked about was like thinking about going to a barber and saying, you want a haircut. And they gave you a Justin Bieber haircut and you wanted a shaved head. You still got an output. The barber can still check that box. Hey, I gave a haircut and it's done. It's done perfectly, but it's not what the user wanted. So you have to create value between the service provider and the customer receiving it. They got to work together, and that comes with communication. You setting it down, having an idea and understanding a program allows you. The company I'm working with now, who's doing some of our updating programming and some of our new projects, I can sit down there with the programmer and they're like, well, we could do this X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like, I understand you could do it. It'd be cool if we could do that. They're like, oh, yeah, because we can talk the same language. We can have the communication. I'm not writing the code. To tell you the truth, the language we're using now, I'm still learning. I'm not confident enough in it where I can open up the hood and be like, okay, here I'm gonna fix this if it's broken. So I'm relying on their expertise, but I could still have that conversation. It's like the functionality, output, the outcome that I'm looking for is getting achieved. And not just a output of, hey, we check this box, the code works, we hit buttons, things happen. It's meeting what actually I'm looking for and what the programmer expects to happen.
I I, uh, I like where you're coming from there, and I would add to that that we we all know that the system will always need to be updated in some fashion or form, and there are ways to set things up so that they're going to be easily modified and updated, and ways to set things up where they're not. Examples of that are commenting, just writing scalable code, being able to predict what changes may occur based on your past experience, or what you anticipate. Well, some of the bad situations that I've run into and that I um, want to just bring to light, that not to take the negative side, but if you're taking some other project that is completely unrelated, and just modifying it to make it work for this project, that's going to be frustrating to the next person who is going to get into the code, and is going to that could work very well, but it's not clean, and it's not going to be you're not setting it up for ease of modification. That's one example of that. Or writing code that may be either overly optimized, or maybe only you understand because it's done in a very advanced way, that isn't necessarily ideal for modification. It could work and it could be great for what it does today, but it may not be helpful for later. And the last part is ease of troubleshooting. There are going to be things that come up that need to get looked at, and if it's not, if code is not easy to troubleshoot, or at least help to isolate a problem, it's only going to cause everybody a lot of problems, and extra effort, and possibly lead you down roads that you don't want to be going down, that are going to either cause more problems, or require additional time that wasn't necessarily planned for.
Oh, yes. I've actually had that experience early on when I got into AV. I had code that was very hard to follow. I mean, extremely hard. It really baffled me why the programmer did it the way they did it. I don't know why, but I still remember to this day, and this is years away from even looking at that code. There was I was trying to figure out why something wasn't working. I was looking at a function which called a function in another file. So I went to that file, found that function because there was a whole bunch of functions listed in that file, which all it did was call another function in another file. And I had to go find that file, go through all that, and there was no comments, no like I'm wondering like why are you using a function to call a function? And like it, they must have had their reason. I can't, answer that for them or any of that stuff, but it was like I had to go through like 3, 4, 5 page of different code files just to find out what was actually going on.
Yeah, I think that there may be two answers to that. Is one, there needs to maybe be a handoff process where somebody like you needs to be able to sign off on the code, or at least have be trained, if you will, to say, this is the code and this is how it was written, so that there's some type of a vetting process. Or there may need to be some way of being able to specify that code needs to be written in a certain way, that it needs, whatever you decide that criteria is. Um, but it addresses some of the items that we discussed, because I, I could see that being problematic, but I also understand that everybody is in this to satisfy the requirements of a project and do things on time and under budget and so on and so forth. But I think part of the criteria, in my mind, for the sake of the client, needs to be that the code needs to be able to be maintained and updated in a reasonable fashion.
So that you brought a good point, Steve, because I don't know if enough people talk about that and or even state that. So how could like someone like me who I'll put out RFPs and all that stuff, how could that best look like in the RFP process where yes, we're gonna get that the code can be modified, but also, that means money. Let's be honest. To make the code modifiable, you got to have a good programmer. You got to have someone who sets it up correctly. That takes time. That takes money. So how do they even justify that when they're quoting? And then when you look at the RFP process, you want to compare apple to apple, not apple to orange. So it sounds like it's a hard process. So you have any insight onto that side?
Yeah, and then the first thing would be that kind of, you always say, what happens, if you don't train people and they stay. So I guess the thing is, you can get a cheaper product, but if you can't modify it, you're going to end up paying more in the long run. But what an answer to that could be having a check-in process where you use a, a code repo, like a Git or something like that, where you you require to be able to look at the code as it's being written. I don't know that people that how a outside contractor would feel about that, but we do that internally when we work as a team. The team leader needs to review the code, and we require it being checked in as it's being worked on, so that we can see progress, but more importantly, see if somebody is getting off base, so they don't get off base too far. Um, and it's a great form of backup and historical records. But that would be one way of doing it, if if you think that that's something that's agreeable. The other way would be maybe just specifying that uh, certain criteria within an RFP, although those are always open to interpretation and usually taken with a grain of salt. But there's ways that you could do that, and I guess the more detailed you can be. So, for example, I won't get into platform specific, but I've had certain requirements that you can only write in one language for a platform, not the language of your choice, because the not because that's the language that they work in and they're most comfortable with. So that's something I think, having commenting is certainly good, and possibly even writing that you're going to require a handoff, where the programmer is going to need to walk somebody through their code when it gets turned over, as and so it can get signed off. I don't know. Those are some ideas that come up off the top of my head. I think the best one would be the code review, if that could be
Yeah.
agreeable.
Yeah, that sounds like a good option. No, definitely.
But I think that this is a real issue, and I think that it's the reason for bringing it up is also to not just to challenge programmers and to provide accountability, but more so to protect programmers, because there are some bad actors that give what we do a bad name, and I'm sure that we all have the best intentions, but when a client is given something that is not is unsatisfactory in terms of source code, a lot of times they will make a big stink and it will be a mark on everybody's record. So that's really one of the premises of having this conversation and bringing this up with our community. Um, James, any final thoughts, or how can people get in touch with you and continue this conversation?
No real final thoughts on it. I think we kind of summed this up pretty well. Again, if people want to get a hold of me, you Google me, you'll find me. I'm on LinkedIn, in the Ask the Programmer community. I'm going to try to be a little more active there. Again, I'm on X at AV_James King. I'm on Blue Sky. Again, Google me, you'll find me.
And we would like to hear from you. Let us know what you think about this topic, if this is something that is an issue, a concern, and also what ideas you have. The more we share, the more everybody can benefit. So let us know what you think, and leave a comment either on YouTube if you're watching the video, or audio on your favorite podcast player, or in the LinkedIn community, or reaching out to us. There's many ways you can reach us, and we want to hear from you. And we also are interested, if you want to come on a show and talk about this or any other topic that you feel would be beneficial. You can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. You could also reach my company, Control Concepts, at controlconcepts.net. And we are a supporter of this podcast. And we help programmers by creating the building blocks that they need to either integrate the new products, or products that have complex APIs, or add functionality to their systems. And you can count on us to help you with those tools and utilities and the support required to implement them. We would certainly like to hear from you, and we look forward to continuing to bring this show to meet the needs of our audience. So please reach out to us. And until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.